around. Let me tell the story of the Black Forest ham.
There was nothing better than ripping open a new Pokemon game, flipping through the official guide, and getting to work experiencing a new game for the first time. Until your neighbor who's 4 years older than you comes in with a heinous claim about how releasing your entire team unlocks like a golden Mewtwo or some shit. What do you get when you combine the onset of the early internet with Pokemon's natural ability to build community? There's those infamous creepypastas and ghostly legends surrounding the franchise, but what I find even more interesting are the rumored hidden secrets that kids have claimed for years lay dormant in the game's code. In this video, I'm going to cover 9 of some of my favorites from my own personal experience, as well as some of the more interesting ones that I've found online. And through all of this, I hope to answer the question, why are there so many urban legends in Pokemon? So the first legend that I want to talk about is probably one that no one else has heard of. Well, you've definitely never heard of it because it was made up by this kid's older brother when I was 7 years old. I remember holding his Game Boy with Pokemon Emerald's Route 111 music blasting through the speakers. I was just messing around as I'd only played a little bit of Ruby at the time, and I run up to this mysterious guy in front of the house just at the start of the route. And I turn to the older brother and I ask, what does this guy do? He begins to tell me this crazy story. The story goes that in Pokemon Emerald specifically, if you talk to the guy in front of the yellow house on Route 111, he would turn the entire region into Magikarp. Yeah, every Pokemon and character visible in the overworld would just become Magikarp and the game would be unplayable. And for some reason, this shook my little bones to the core. Looking back, this guy just triggered a string of battles against the Winstraight family, and this kid's brother probably just didn't want me to mess up his save file. But man, this single claim made me avoid that house for probably the next 2 years. And then I may have spread some misinformation about it as well, but I'd like to think that I kind of helped contribute to the spread of this Pokemon urban legend, but no one else besides me would have been dumb enough to believe this, so. These next 2 legends are really awesome because they're way more plausible, and there's years of these rumors being spread around the early ages of the internet. And even adding to their greatness is the fact that there's actually a little bit of truth to them, although these myths were slightly off in the execution, and I'll explain that. But for legend number 2 that I wanted to talk about, this one's an absolute classic that you've all probably heard of before, but I feel like it just had to be mentioned. In the Kanto games, there's a random truck that's sitting in the port of the SS Anne. This truck served literally no purpose besides decoration, but as usual, Pokemon fans were not satisfied with that being the truth. Someone somewhere came up with the idea that because of the fact that scenery was pretty sparse in the original games, likely due to the storage constraints and whatnot, this truck had to mean something more. This investigation evolved into the theory that if you walked up to the truck and used strength, it would be moved, resulting in a Mew encounter. While it's possible to encounter Mew in the game, it can only be done by manipulating the game in such a way that honestly boggles my mind to think about the first person who discovered this, but that's a whole separate video in of itself. So in order to actually glitch the game and encounter Mew, you'll need to go through a gauntlet of obscure steps first discovered probably by some middle-aged unemployed guy with a lot of time on his hands. But here it is. Step 1, you catch an Abra. Step 2, you cross the Nugget Bridge and go left and then down to the patch of grass next to the bridge. Step 3, as you walk down, press start just as the NPC locks eyes with you, then teleport back to the Cerulean Pokemon Center. If the exclamation goes above the trainer's head as you teleport out, you're onto something. Step 4, you go back to the bridge through the gauntlet of trainers that should have already been battled besides the one trainer who has a Slowpoke. Step 5, fuck that trainer up. Step 6, you go back to the Pokemon Center in Cerulean through teleportation. Step 7, you walk back to the Nugget Bridge and your pause menu should pop up. Step 8, you close the pause menu, and then step 9, you have your Mew. It's so funny to me that actually obtaining Mew is so convoluted, it seems even more far-fetched than just pushing a truck over with strength. So if the concept of the person who first discovered these intricate steps doesn't blow your mind, then nothing's ever going to impress you and you'll never be satisfied in life. Maybe the truck was originally meant for something besides decoration, but was scrapped in the final cut. But the fact that this legend is somewhat true is super interesting. And it adds another layer of mystery to these early Game Boy entries, and gives some credence to the insane steps that can be taken to unlock secrets. I mean, if this was a real thing you could do, why is it then so ridiculous to say that if you beat the Elite Four 100 times, you can battle with Professor Oak? And yep, that's actually the next real urban legend. In Pokemon Red and Blue, it was thought that if you beat the Elite Four 100 times in a row, Professor Oak would pull up on you and battle you to the death. This sounds like a rumor that my neighbor told me as a kid to laugh at me as I worked my 6-year-old self to the bone, repeatedly battling the Elite Four over and over again. I'm just imagining some poor kid in 2002 spending days grinding away at the Elite Four, tediously winning over and over again, only to be disappointed when this oak encounter inevitably never happened. Could not be me. Psh, idiot kids. Anyways, there's many variations to the beat the Elite Four 100 times lie. Another really common one that I saw was that this achievement would give you free roam access to the Hall of Fame room, where if you did enough digging, you would stumble on a new area where the quote-unquote Pokegods lived, which was a paradise apparently with legendary secret Pokemon and Master Balls on sale for pennies. I like the Oak Death Battle version a lot because the interesting thing is that, like the Mew theory, there's actually an Oak battle nested deep within the game's code. It was cut from the actual content of the game for one reason or another, but you can actually trigger it through glitches as well. But nothing is probably more universally known and accepted of these rumors than the thought that spamming the A or B button would increase your chances of catching a Pokemon.
Yo, you good?
Oh, fuck. I remember being a kid pile driving my thumb into my A button with such force that I snapped the clamp off of my original DS screen. Now, when you look at the game's code, there is nothing in there indicating any increase in catch rate when you spam any buttons. But with that being said, to this day, out of superstition, I still spam the A button. And whether it works or not, you're honestly not even trying unless you sprain your thumb trying to catch a Pokemon. And I will literally never stop doing it. So I'm marking this one down as a fact. I don't even care. Bridging over from these slightly true myths is another widely shared legend that's more centered on lore. It's been speculated that Ditto is actually a failed attempt at cloning Mew. And on the surface, this one might seem ridiculous, but this is the one story out of all of the rest that I'm talking about today that has a solid amount of supporting evidence. For instance, they're both, wait for it, the same color. Alright, that one's pretty stupid because with that logic, we can just say that Lickitung is a horribly disfigured and failed attempt at creating a Mew, but hear me out. Both Ditto and Mew weigh 8.8 pounds. They are the only Pokemon that can learn Transform. Both are genderless, and the game has said in passing that Mewtwo is the only successful clone of Mew, leaving the door open for the possibility of unsuccessful clone attempts. And lastly, the only place to find Ditto in the early games is either the Pokemon Mansion, which is where Mewtwo was said to have escaped from and where the journal entries regarding Mew and Mewtwo's lore are found, and Cerulean Cave, where Mewtwo flees to after leaving the mansion. This has never been officially confirmed or denied by the developers, but come on. Think about it a little bit and let me know if you think that I'm crazy for actually giving this theory some real estate in my mind. If this is true, which I'm certain it is honestly at this point, this is, in my opinion, one of Pokemon's most creative ways in which they've built the world up through showing, not telling. This is the kind of brilliance that you'd only get in something like BioShock, and we've been gifted it in Gen 1 of Pokemon. But anyway, these next two myths are great because they're just our attempts at giving purpose to seemingly random, inaccessible areas in these early games. So if you recall playing the original Red and Blue games, you may remember that on the edge of Pallet Town, there's this inaccessible area of tall grass that's unreachable due to ledges blocking your way. So players immediately saw this and figured that there was this secret purpose to it. One popular theory was that this is where you'd find Bulbasaur, Charmander, and Squirtle if it was somehow reachable. Unfortunately, no one would ever be able to find this out in this case, since it was impossible to reach that area. Impossible, that is, unless you had HM06 Jump. Jump was a secret hidden move that was said to allow players to pass ledges and boundaries by using it, making previously unreachable areas a new possibility to explore. But in the first games, there was only 5 HMs that were given to the player in a real playthrough. But gullible kids around the world spent hours searching for new ways to get this secret 6th HM. A similar rumor to this jump theory sparked up due to what resembled an open path behind Bill's house in the Cerulean Cape. Fans coined this area unofficially as Bill's Secret Garden, and legends spread that you'd be able to encounter incredibly rare Pokemon if you were able to get behind the house. In order to access the area, it was up for interpretation. There were a handful of theories that I came across, like having to bring a specific combination of Pokemon to the cottage like the Evolutions, or completing the full Pokedex. In later games and remakes of the Kanto region, this area was removed, leaving players to continue to wonder what this trail might have led them to. Alright, so every legend I've talked about so far, while pretty ridiculous, they were all at least somewhat grounded in reality. But the last two that I found are so completely dumb that I had to include them here. Okay, so there was this lie going around that if you named any rock or water type a curse word, then talking to Brock or Misty in the game would actually lead to the player getting slapped. I don't know what type of demented person came up with this or why, but imagining getting backhanded by Brock because you named your level 11 Geodude shit or asshole or something is hilarious.
Any of these little fuckers ever pop out of the fucking wall and say, fuck, there's a horse cock in my room or a donkey dick?
Anyways, I'm glad that this theory spread enough to find its way onto the internet as a shared experience because I just love it. Okay, to end it all, seriously, this is probably my favorite and the most bizarre theory that I've found when researching for this video. But after the release of the Gen 1 games, allegedly on April 1st of 1999, the official Nintendo website posted an article detailing that the player could capture a Lickitung and evolve it into the most OP Pokemon ever, Luigi.
Oh yeah. Any Pokemon. You've heard of Pokemon, right?
Yes, I've heard of Pokemon. Okay. Luigi?
His dex entry would have been 160 and his typing would have been Plumber, most likely 4 times super effective to Pokemon that are water diarrhea combinations. He claims that Luigi's moveset includes Wrench, Gas, which is a poison move and I feel like that should be a move for Wario, but moving on. Cower, which increases your defense, and Family Reunion, which is an attack that summons fucking Mario and Yoshi for a triple team attack. As a side note, I just find it absolutely horrifying that Luigi would know the move Wrench, implying that he's beating a poor creature to death with a plumber's wrench. And how do we get from Luigi from a Lickitung? First, you need to catch a Lickitung with only an Ultra Ball. No other Pokeball will work for this. After doing this, you need to keep Lickitung in your active Pokemon list and go to the exact tile where Snorlax blocked the entrance to Vermilion City earlier in the game. Now for the most difficult part, turn your Game Boy upside down and use a rare candy on Lickitung. If you're standing in the right position on the bridge, congratulations, you just got yourself a Luigi who's now able to bash the kneecaps in of all the Pokemon and people in the region with his signature move, Wrench. I love that this is just an April Fool's joke that probably got lost in translation, but there's other examples of random characters magically showing up in the Pokemon games like Yoshi. For some reason, our tiny brains loved to make any excuse to bring in Mario characters into the Pokemon world. It's probably why we're all innately programmed to love crossovers like Smash. So we've had our fun talking about all these bizarre theories, and there's still so many hilarious ones that I could have mentioned, but across all of these myths, I'm still left wondering, where did these all come from, and why was Pokemon so specifically a hotbed franchise for these urban legends? Well, I'm no expert on sociology or anything of the sort, but I love these stories as I think it parallels how other urban legends have grown over time. Myths like these have been created since the beginning of time. People love explaining things that they can't understand. Take the Appalachians, for example, an area of America that has consistently pumped out crazy mythological creatures like the Wendigo and Mothman. When you have a group of people in a dense, unexplored area like the deep forests of the Appalachian Mountains, you're gonna get some crazy stories. And superstitions are usually based in geographic locations, but what happens when you build out an entire digital world with Game Boy graphics that leave a lot up to interpretation? The Pokemon world, in a way, served as its own geographic location to spur up its own mysteries and mythologies. Except in this case, it was shared across millions of people around the world. And this interconnected mini society between all these kids across the world formed these same legends that were being passed down from your stoner neighbor and his friends, and you and I, we treated it as holy canon because we were all dumb, gullible kids. You give an entire generation of people access to the same game on devices they don't understand, and the same Appalachia-like behavior presents itself through the form of these urban legends, which after watching this video, you can see how insane some of them got. It's pretty neat in my opinion that we all had a shared place where we could let our imaginations run wild and actually see how far some of it went. I think the main driver for these oddities is because the earlier games became popular just as the internet became a thing. None of us knew how anything really worked, and even if we were to explore the wild west of the internet at that time, we were just fed more crazy wild theories on there as well. And when I first played Pokemon, I couldn't read, so I'd pretty much accept any theory thrown at me. You could have told me anything and I'd accept it. The only criteria for me believing you is 1, you were older than me, 2, that's all. You just have to be older than me. I really hope the younger generation keeps this spirit of mythology alive. It's such a fun, intangible part of the games and the community that brings even more life to the Pokemon world. Who knows, maybe the bugginess of the newer games has led to kids now coming up with their own crazy mysteries and stories to pass to each other. I've left a lot of cool legends out, but I'd love to hear some of your personal stories about the things you believed as a kid. Maybe in the future we'll test some of these legends out, but for now they're all left up to our imaginations and the guys on Reddit who've already debunked them. Anyways, thanks for watching.